While it seems like one of the most unassuming ghost types, the truth is that Sableye is hiding some dark secrets. But what even is this Pokemon supposed to be? So, Sableye, a Dark and Ghost type Pokemon introduced in Generation 3. Yes, this Pokemon did in fact have the coveted type combination before Spiritomb ever did, and because this was before the introduction of Fairy type, Sableye originally had no weakness. Ruby and Sapphire was a game that really started filling out the Ghost type roster, giving us 4 unique evolution lines. But despite this, Sableye is probably the least ghostly feeling out of any Ghost type. It is primarily a Dark type after all, and much of its behavior and appearance is more in line with Dark types. There is one Pokédex entry from Pokemon Ruby that is pretty spooky. Sableye lead quiet lives deep inside caverns. They are feared, however, because these Pokemon are thought to steal the spirits of people when their eyes burn with a sinister glow in the darkness. That does sound a lot more like a Ghost type. Could you imagine exploring a cave, you know, as Pokemon trainers do, and suddenly you see these eyes staring at you from the void? Though there isn't too much else about Sableye in the same vein of this unsettling tall tale. Even in the same generation, we find out that it really just loves eating gems. Their sharp teeth and claws are meant to dig through rocks and crush their food. Funny too that this Pokemon ends up having such a connection with gems that substances in the eaten rocks crystallize and rise up to the Pokemon's body surface. Then look, the gems on its back even reference Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. From here on out, just about every other Pokédex entry details Sableye's diet of gems. In Generation 7, things started getting kinda funny. It's a fiend for gemstones, so it stalks Carbink. Unfortunately, Gabite almost always grabs them first. That is just so cool. Now that we've got a weak Pokemon that is literally made out of gems, it's the perfect target for Sableye. But I love how this also establishes a rivalry with another Pokemon that has the same diet. But it is kind of weird that both Gabite and Sableye, a Dragon and Dark type, will hunt a Fairy type like Carbink. Either way, it makes for some hilarious moments because with the introduction of the SOS feature in Sun and Moon, we actually get to see certain Pokemon attacking each other. So this is completely canon. Though also Pokemon Sword decided to bring back the lore about it being believed to steal people's spirits away. This game once again proving to have some of the spookiest Pokédex entries. But with everything else that we see, Sableye continues to stick to the more mischievous attitude. This does all fit for the inspiration behind Sableye, which along with the usual imps, trolls, and gremlins of the sort apparently also happens to include the Hopkinsville Goblin? Okay, so the Hopkinsville Goblin. Our story begins in the summer of 1955, near Kelly and Hopkinsville in Christian County, Kentucky. While visiting his friend Elmer Sutton, Billy Ray Taylor claimed to have seen a bright light in the sky as he was outside to draw water. Moments later, several creatures began to approach the house, described as short with long arms, big ears, and glowing eyes. Taylor, along with the other adults in the Sutton family, grabbed their shotguns and fired at the creatures, who were unharmed by the bullets. After the creatures receded for a moment, the entire group drove to the police department to report the incident. Police investigated but only found evidence that a shootout had indeed occurred, so they left the family for the night, who were allegedly terrorized once more when the creatures returned, at which point they left town for the night. Now that is a wild story. Of course, extraterrestrial sightings haven't been uncommon over the last century, but it's just strange to see that this one in particular is being cited as an inspiration for a Pokemon. I wonder how that started. Sure, there are similarities, no doubt, but of all Pokemon, why this one? When there are so few other Pokemon based on American cryptids and legends, especially because there are other Pokemon that exist who are more clearly inspired by Western alien encounters, in both design and personality. I'm going to have to stick this one with a big ol' citation needed, but let me continue as planned. Like I said, there are for sure physical similarities. There's the body shape and especially the glowing eyes, which are a signature part of Sableye. There is also a connection in how they move. The Hopkinsville Goblins were said to do flips into tree branches and sway ominously, both of which we see Sableye do in the video games. And you could say that Sableye, being the first Pokemon to not have a weakness due to its type combination, is a nod to the fact that the goblins were unaffected by bullets. But that's about where the similarities end. Sableye's behavior is very distinctly that of a cave-dwelling gem eater, rather than an extraterrestrial landing in the farmlands. I would assume that a Pokemon based off of this sighting would be stated to supposedly come from space, to better fit the inspiration, especially because the same has been done for other Pokemon. Again, I'll say that the Hopkinsville Goblins fit as a visual inspiration for Sableye, so maybe that's just that. But when it comes to personalities, Sableye becomes its own thing entirely, and we see this in the anime, where a Sableye hangs out in an abandoned mine and just gets a kick out of scaring people.
Say, Sableye! That's not a ghost, May. It's just a Sableye, a Pokémon.
Of course, Sableye has also been the star of several gem-based Pokemon Flash games that have been erased from the Pokemon website. Oh, but I remember playing the Minecart one in the Dream World a whole lot, and I just loved it. Generation 6 also gave us Mega Sableye, which takes the gem and makes it its entire personality, and it was so fun to use, because it always made the opponent cry. We also see its mischievous nature and tendency to dig up treasure reflected in many appearances across the trading card game, which I just love as an idea. Many Sableye have abilities and moves that affect the first turn, fitting the sneaky and agile movements. Many also have moves and abilities that involve drawing cards or taking cards from the discard pile, which references the fact that it digs for food. And lastly, a good amount of them have ways to disrupt your opponent's hand, as a way of showing Sableye's mischievousness and how it can swiftly attack from the dark. It continues to be a menace to this very day, and I love that this is a great way of using card design to reflect a Pokemon's abilities and personality. Most recently, Sableye snuck its way into Pokemon Unite, where it belongs to the Drip Shopkeeper, and will soon be coming as a playable Pokemon. This might be the reason I boot up this game again. Sableye is genuinely one of my favorite Pokemon. It even used to be my channel mascot back when I was mostly creating Yu-Gi-Oh content, which by the way, expect an announcement about that soon. My taste in Pokemon has always just been either big dragons and reptiles or funny little goblins. I'm very happy I was able to snag a Sableye plush during the Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire era. This thing can't even stand on its own, the head is just too big, it's perfect. I'm so glad that this Pokemon has constantly been incorporated into Pokemon media as of late, because there's just something about it being the reverse of the friendly little Skrunkos we're used to seeing. It isn't evil, and aside from one Pokedex entry, it isn't really even all that harmful. It's a Pokemon that can still be your friend, it just wants to cause a little trouble without any harm. And maybe that's what the creatures from the Hopkinsville sighting were trying to do. They just like a good practical joke, and maybe it got a little too out of hand. I'm just glad that I was able to once again stand alongside one of my favorite Pokemon that I admittedly haven't been thinking about a whole lot lately. Maybe I was trying to run from my past. Doesn't really matter, because Sableye was always there, watching and waiting. And so that has been the tale of Sableye. Thank you to all of my channel members who continue to support and make these videos possible, especially the Great Gators Jackson, Justin R, Mr. Pig Puncher, Phantom Pyro, and Quago. If you would like to get a shout out here as well as access to emotes to use in comments and live streams, you can become a channel member as well today. You can also follow me on Twitter for more spooky memes as we continue throughout the month of October. Anyway, this has been GatorEX, and I'll catch you all later.
It's a brand new season at Kids WB.
Brand new Pokémon!
And MIB.
A brand new season of strange creatures.
Some with ugly facial features.
Some have legs, some have wings.
Some have weird for heady things.
Some are tall, some are small.
Some have only one eyeball.
Some are catty, some are tangled.
Some are doggy, some are mangled.
Some so fast they win the races.
Some got big old stretched out faces.
New season, new creatures. The premiere of Men in Black and 2 new Pokemon. This weekend on Kids WB.
Ow! Ow, that hurts! What are you feeding me, rocks?